Right, so let's look at Galatians. If you have your Bible, or it's going to be up on the screen, we're just going to look at 2 verses this morning. Galatians chapter 5. Some of you guys have memorized this list, right? How many of you guys think you have this one memorized? Anybody? Galatians chapter 5, the fruit of the Spirit. Not the fruits, but the fruit of the Spirit. Here we go. It'll be up on the screen for you. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. That's the fruit of the Spirit. What does the fruit of the Spirit look like, taste like? What's it smell like? Like that's what it is. That's the description. So here's our first point this morning. Got several points. If you're taking notes, if you're a note-taking kind of person, like this is going to be a good one because I got some good notes for you. If you want to just take a picture of it, you can do that too. Here's the first point. The Spirit's fruit comes from the Spirit's life. The Spirit's fruit comes from the Spirit's life. You can't have fruits of the Spirit without the Spirit. We're going to talk a little bit more about this as we unpack this. But the true evidence of God's life in us is His fruit. It's not our acts of service necessarily, right? It's not the words that we say that are spiritual, the, Christianese that we develop. It's the fruit of the Spirit. So, if you're a healthy Christian, if you're a healthy plant, you will produce fruit. Now, it may just be like a little bud. It may be a little flower. Maybe just like a big, obvious apple. But you will produce fruit as a Christian because the Spirit produces fruit. And that fruit looks like love, joy, peace, patience, long-suffering. That's what it looks like. That's the way that it's described. Now, the last couple of weeks, we've talked about the works of the what? Anybody remember? Works of the flesh. And the works of the flesh, those are those things that we do. This is my work. And it's for, do you remember the fleshly song? Me, 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 me. Right, it's for me. The flesh is for me. And these works are burdensome. They're laborious. I got to really pay attention to make this happen. And we said they're damaging. The works of the flesh aren't just like sins that sinners do. They're things that we all do to try to get life. Right? Like, I think this is going to help me have a better life. Most people don't wake in the morning and be like, how can I really screw up my life today? That's not how we think. We think like, well, how can I have a good life? Or how could I have a good relationship? Or how could I, whatever. And so some people think like, well, selfish ambition. I've got to be selfishly ambitious to get ahead in my job. Or some people think like, oh, fornication, to have a really good life, I've got to sleep with my girlfriend, or I've got to sleep with my boyfriend. To really progress, I've got to be jealous, envious. It spurs me on. Right, those are works of the flesh. Then people think that it's going to work well for them. But it doesn't bring life because it doesn't have life. Only God has life. We talked about nailing up a picture. It's like it damages the wall. It looks good on the outside for a little while, but it damages the wall. Whereas the life of the Spirit brings life and gives life. And so the Spirit produces fruit. That's a really important understanding, is the Spirit of God produces fruit. Here's the second point. The Spirit's fruit grows all at once. The Spirit's fruit grows all at once. We're not dividing up like I'm working like patience now and then self-control. And it's just developing. Like if you have a fruit tree, it's like, oh yeah, the fruit is growing bigger as it's also turning orange, right? It's just this natural progression. It's not like a division of like these different attributes, because there's a supernatural process of me becoming more like Christ. And as you become more like Christ, that fruit becomes more like Him, more like his fruit. So the Spirit's fruit is growing all at once, and we'll kind of break that idea down a little bit more specifically. The third thing is the Spirit's fruit has potential for more fruit. It's the Spirit at work in us and the fruit that's born in us that furthers the gospel and fulfills the Great Commission, right? It's the love that drives me forward, right? It's the patience that allows me to share the gospel. It's the compassion, right? It's this fruit inside. Just like fruit has seeds, it's meant to like make more fruit. Seeds, the animals eat the fruit and they poop on the ground and the seed gets buried, right? It's kind of gross, but that's the process. Or, the nicer process is you get the seed out and you plant it yourself. Right? Like one way or another, the fruit is there to produce seeds so there can be more fruit, more trees, more plants. And that's the same for you. That part of the Spirit in you, part of the fruit in you is to produce more fruit. Right? Like Jesus said, they will know that you are my disciples by your love. That's part of the fruit. It's the kindness of God that leads us to repentance. It's the peace that passes understanding that people see and desire. So you're seeing this? It's the fruit of the Spirit that has the potential for more fruit in other people's lives. That's the gospel is shared and as Christ's life is given to other people. Here's the fourth point this morning is this. The Spirit's fruit is not for the fruit. The Spirit's fruit is not for the fruit. This is really an important kind of point. Fruit is not meant to just be admired, but eaten, to be enjoyed, right? That's the point. And so, maybe if you remember back a couple weeks, we talked about motive. Motive matters. And the motive of the fruit is to be eaten. The reason why I produce fruit, the reason why God produces fruit in me is for it to be eaten and enjoyed. If you have fruit that just sits on your table for 3 months, what happens to it? Anybody? Goes bad, right? It's rotten. The fruit of God's Spirit is meant for others. The fruit of God's Spirit is meant for others. There is fruit that we leave on our table for months, though, right? That's fake fruit, right? If you don't want to mess with it, you buy some nice-looking fake fruit and you stick it on your table, right? Anybody done that? Right? It's like, I don't have to worry about that. The bugs don't show up. It doesn't rot. It doesn't get soft. Perfect. But it can't be enjoyed. It can't be eaten. When you were a kid, you ever have, that thing where you grab something and you think it's a real fruit? I remember there was this plasticky peach that had actual fuzz on the outside, and I was like, oh, and I was like, oh man, this isn't real. That's the same thing. There's fake fruit in the same way, and that fake fruit is really just to be looked at, and it's really for no benefit other than maybe the fruit's benefit and the people that see it. Rather than the fruit that has benefit, you can cut it open and smell it, right? You cut open a nice orange and it's just you just smell it. God smells the fragrance of our fruit and is blessed. He looks down and he's like, this smells good. That's the fragrance of Christ. And so the fruit that we produce by the Spirit's life in us is enjoyed by God and by others. Other people have the opportunity, wow, I love your gentleness. I love your kindness. I'm so blessed by your self-control. Right? It's enjoyable for God and for others. But if you remember, here's the thing that's kind of interesting, is there are fruits that we can fake that actually become fleshly. They're actually works of the flesh because they're not for other people, they're for me. There's ways that I can, make some fruit, fake some fruit, but it's really for me. It's not for other people. And this is what this looks like. I am loving so I can be loved. I am joyful so I can have a positive day. I practice peace so I can relax and lower my blood pressure. I have patience so I can get what I want. I am kind so people will be kind to me. I'm good because it makes me feel good about myself. I am faithful so people will trust me with more. I'm gentle so people will listen to me. I have self-control so people will respect me. Do you see the slight, little difference? It's like, yeah, I want to be loving. I want to be patient. I want to be kind. Why? Well, because it's good for me. That's not spiritual fruit. That's not the fruit of the Spirit. That's a character trait. That's a personal discipline maybe, but it's not the fruit of the Spirit. And you can think about it in the people in your life, like who enjoys your fruit? There's people around you. They enjoy that fruit. It's like, yeah, my wife would love it if I was kind. Right? My kids would love me to be gentle. All of these people around me enjoy the fruit. But the weird thing is, if I'm kind of focusing on this, but it's really from me, it doesn't give God glory. And a lot of times the other people don't really even enjoy it. They just feel used. They just feel manipulated. And that doesn't bring God glory. So here's our fifth point this morning is this. The Spirit's fruit is supernatural. Actually, I want you to say that one with me because it's really important. Ready? The Spirit's fruit is supernatural. Not natural. It's supernatural. You can't have it without the life of God in you. Now, there are times where people are like, yeah, I'm a really patient person. I'm a joyful person. Why? Well, just because that's who I am. I mean, you could say I have peace. I'm a peaceful person. But, maybe you're just stoned. That's not the Spirit, right? Maybe you're joyful. You go to the bar and everybody's so joyful. That's a different kind of spirit, right? That's not the Spirit of God. That's the spirit of Jack Daniels or something. I don't know. That's a different kind of a deal. Just because your mom taught you to be patient doesn't mean that's a fruit of the Spirit. It's not supernatural. Just because your grandpa taught you to be joyful, or your significant other taught you to be gentle, or you just, you're just mellow. You're a peaceful person. I told people in first service, I'm a pretty relaxed person, and everybody in college, when I was in college, they thought I was stoned all the time. Oh, I thought you were a stoner. No, I'm just relaxed. I've never been stoned. Sorry. I'm just chill. It's easy. See, it's not supernatural. That's not a fruit of the Spirit. It's just like a natural part of my temperament, or it's something I've been trained for. Training doesn't produce the fruit of the Spirit. Only God's Spirit does. Now, those things are fine and good, in their place. There is some value to it, but it doesn't bring God glory unless it's His Spirit bringing the fruit. Now, I believe that this is I don't know about you, but for me, as I was studying through this and praying through this, this was a little bit of a shift for me. I was like, oh, really? Wow, I guess. See, I can't just work on being more patient or work on being more gentle when we're talking about the Spirit of God. I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but have you ever tried one of these things? Have you ever tried to be more patient? Anybody raise your hand? You would try to be more patient. Anybody? Come on, that's an easy one, right? I'm going to try to be kind. Any kind? Try to be kind? Yeah, I'm trying. And how about failed? Frustrated? Anybody frustrated? Right? It's because that you're trying to do something, but the real life isn't in there. It's the Spirit that brings the life. It's not just I'm trying. So the Spirit wants to glorify God and love others. The flesh just wants to glorify and loves itself. And so the result of my love and my patience and my peace, if the result of those things is my pride, that's not spiritual fruit. Right? If I'm like, oh, I was so kind. I mean, I could have really let that person have it, but I was so kind. And what a great Christian I am. Does everybody know how kind I am? Right? That's pride. That's not spiritual fruit. That's it. Now, there is this danger, and I was thinking about this, like, there's this part of, like, if it was, like, partially real fruit and then partially, like, fake fruit. It was like, you've got to, it's a real apple, but, maybe you, like, stuck a stem on it that was fake or something. There are those times where it's like, yeah, this is I'm mostly in the right place. God is mostly working, but I do have this, maybe I got to cut that part out sometimes. That happens. But when it is God who is working, here's the thing that's interesting. You may find yourself surprised. You might find yourself shocked. Or the people that know you. God has been working in your life, and something happens, and you walk away later, and you're like, wow, I was patient. Wow, I wasn't even trying. Right? Or even better, like your friend or your spouse or, your family member is like, wow, that was a surprise. You were very gentle. You're like, oh yeah, I wasn't even thinking about it. Why? Because the fruit is just being produced by the Spirit of God, not by your work. Now, for some of you, type A, you're like, wait, hold on, what am I supposed to work on then? Because this is church, you got to give me something to work on, right? Like, how am I going to do this? It's a different dynamic. Now, some of you Bible scholars may even be thinking like, well, Pastor Jason, some of those are commands. Like Jesus says, love one another. James says, count it all joy. So is it obedience or is it a fruit of the Spirit? And I would say, yes. It's both. A lot of times in the Bible, we find these things that we're trying to reconcile separately, but I think all we need to do is just bring them together and realize it's kind of like two sides of the same coin or two songs on the same album. They're tensions to manage, not problems to solve. Right? So this isn't a problem to solve. This isn't a tension to manage. This is an understanding that, yes, God is calling me to do this, but yes, God is producing in me the same thing. And a great key for this idea is found in Philippians. We'll put it up on the screen for you. Philippians chapter 2, verse 13 says this, for it is God. Who? God. It is God who works in you, it works in you both to will and to what? Do for his good pleasure. See, it is God who is working in you. For what? For your will and your action. He's working inside. And it's happening from the inside. 1 John also gives us some insight on this. 1 John chapter 5, I'm going to put it up on the screen if you want to look there. We'll look at a few verses there. 1 John chapter 5 says, everyone who believes that Jesus is the Christ has become a child of God. And everyone who loves the Father loves his children too. We know we love God's children if we love God and obey his what? Commandments. Loving God means keeping his commandments, and his commandments, here's the key, are not, what's the word? Burdensome. It's not a burden to obey, it's a blessing because God has worked in my heart and I actually love God and I love my neighbor and I'm allowing that work of God to happen. For every child of God defeats this world, and we achieve this victory through our faith. That's what Paul has been talking about in Galatians, our faith. Not our works necessarily. We're not working for this. We're believing in Jesus. We're born again. God is working in us, and we are trusting him. And verse 5 says, and who can win this battle against the world? Only those who believe that Jesus is the Son of God. So it's my faith. I'm born again. He fills me with his love. His love is poured out into me. And then his commands aren't a burden. They're a blessing. They're part of life. They're part of my desire. So then, if God is working, why are we not all producing? You may be thinking that, like, all right, so if God is the one that's working, why are we all producing? Well, there's a couple reasons. One is because we still have our natural self. We still have our old man. We still have the flesh in there. But we also have some choices to make. And I think this is a really important idea to understand, is that there's a way that more fruit can be produced. There's a way that we can be more fruitful. I'm going to give you two analogies this morning. Jesus actually talked about one of these ideas with soil and seeds. Remember the parable of the sower? These seeds are sown. I'm going to give you a different kind of a parable of the sailboat. You see, the Spirit of God is like the wind. In fact, the same word is used for wind as for spirit in the scriptures. So it's very applicable. We're like a sailboat. How many of you guys ever been on a sailboat? How does a sailboat move? What's the locomotion of the sailboat? Does it have a motor? Not typically. It has a sail because it's a sailboat. The sail is the key. So the sail is your heart. The sail is your heart. That's the connection. That's the locomotion of your life is your heart. And so the Spirit is the wind and the sail is your heart. So the question becomes, what is the condition of your heart? Here's the big idea. Big idea for you up on the screen. It is the condition of your heart, not the power of your will, that produces fruit. It's the condition of your heart, not the power of your will. I'm gonna. It's the condition of your heart. So if you're in the sailboat, first question is, what direction are you pointing? The wind is always blowing. What direction are you pointing? Are you pointing in the right direction? Are you seeking the Lord? Are you looking to Jesus? Are you going his way? Right? You've got to be set up in the right direction. Is your sail even raised? Right? You're like, yeah, I got a sail, but it's down here. And what does that look like? Well, like you're in church, but you're actually shopping. I don't know. You come to worship, but you're just, thinking about lunch or whatever. People are like, wow, that was amazing worship. You're like, yeah, I didn't get much out of it. Oh, that was a good message. Like, oh, I was Like your sail isn't even up. You got to open your heart. This morning, Adrian got baptized first service. And he talked about being in worship and how after he's given his life to the Lord, he's like, everybody around me was worshiping and I was just kind of standing there. I was like, it's not clicking for me. And he just opened his mouth. He just started to sing. He's like, and as I started to sing, like, it's like, oh, okay. As he opened his mouth, as he opened his heart to the Lord and connected with the worship, he felt the Spirit's power. He felt the Spirit moving. And there's times it's like, I'm not even connecting because I'm not even open. And then once it's open, here's the other question, is it wide open? You just put up a little sail, one of those little things, and think you're going to get a lot out of it? No. You're going to get, and Addison actually talked about this a little bit this morning, you're going to get what you put into it. You're going to get out of it what you put into it. And so, she's talking about man, as I'm coming to church, as I'm doing this, I'm doing that, and God is actually oh, it's working. It's bigger. I see it. Somebody told me after first service, there's a giant sail called a spinnaker, right? You guys are sailors, you know that you're like, oh, spinnaker. It's beautiful. It's this big, beautiful sail. That's a big, beautiful, open heart to receive everything that the Lord has. When I was 21, that's when I got baptized. And my heart, I just told the Lord, hey, God, whatever you want. My heart is just open, whatever you want to do. And the Lord's like, oh, I got that. We just filled it. But if you're just like this little sail, he's like, yeah, I can feel that. I can feel it, but it's not going very far. Opening your heart. The other one is your sail adjusted to catch the wind? Like you can have your sail out, you can, okay, I'm open, but your attitude needs to be adjusted. You're just like in the wrong place. You're seeking the wrong things. Your direction is a little wonky. You can find yourself, there's a lot of wind, but if your attitude, if your direction isn't adjusted, like you're going to miss it. It's just going to blow right past you. So here's the thing. If your heart is open and your, sail is up and you're waiting and you're wanting and you're seeking, then the next part is just wait on the Lord. Wait for his timing. Wait for him to move. He'll do it in his timing. As you open your heart, as you seek him, you'll find him. But it is God's timing. That's the thing about a sailboat is it takes some time. Somebody was telling me they'd gone from like Dana Point to Newport. It took them hours. I was like, all right, maybe that's why we want a motorboat sometimes. But the sailboat, it's going back and forth. Sometimes in your life, you're like, this isn't going the direction that I thought I was going to go. And then it turns, and you're like, wait, where are we going? God's like, hey, I got it. Just put your sail up, and let's go. Okay, that's the first analogy. It's your heart. What's the condition of your heart? And the second thing is about your actions. So, if you're like, okay, what do I got to do? What do I got to do? Okay, I'm going to give you some things to do. If you want to take notes, this is a great note time. If I go too fast, take a picture if you want. It'll be posted. We'll email it to you. Get our emails. Here's the big idea for the second part. Health, not hard work, produces more fruit. If you want to produce more fruit, it's not about your hard work. It's about your health. Are you healthy in your relationship with God? Not, are you working? I'm doing all this, doing all this, doing all this. It's like, is your life healthy? Is your relationship with God healthy? Now, sometimes being healthy is hard work. Amen, right? You know what I'm talking about? Like, okay, it takes some hard work to be healthy, but it's a different kind of work, and it's a different focus. So how many guys are like, you got a garden in your yard, or, you got a garden or a fruit tree? Anybody garden, fruit tree, that kind of stuff? I kill just about every plant I've ever had. I may have told you that. Right now I've got a bamboo in my office. It's lived for like 2 months. It's like a record almost. I mean, I'm challenged. So I Googled, how do you get more fruit out of your plants? All right? So very interesting spiritual connections here. All right? Okay, are you ready? I'm going to give you 10 things. If you're like, okay, I'm working, I want to work at this. Don't just work on, I'm going to be patient. I'm going to be patient. You're going to get frustrated. Don't just work on like, I'm going to be gentle. I'm going to be gentle. People will be like, that's not gentle. Slow down, right? So here's what we're going to focus on. Here's the first one. Number 1, bear lots of fruit. We need lots of light. We need lots of light. And Jesus said, I am the what? Light of the world. I'm the light of the world. That's what Jesus said. If you ever, when you were a little kid or whatever, remember in kindergarten, preschool, you like plant a little seed, a little cup, dirt, soil, right? Remember that part? You stick it in, I remember sticking it in a closet. And you know where that plant, the plant grew towards the crack where the light was coming out. That's how drawn to Jesus we need to be. Wherever that little bit of light is, I'm going to come. And if I can, I'm going to open up the whole thing. I want all the light I can. I'm going to seek Jesus. I'm going to talk to Jesus. I'm going to trust Jesus. I'm going to cling to Jesus. Like Jesus is the first key. Seeking him. Second one is this. We need lots of water. We need lots of water. Jesus said, if anyone thirsts, let him come to me and drink, and I will give him living water. Right? Living water, water that is alive. And the Bible talks about being washed by the water of the word. So if you want to bear more fruit, wash yourself in God's word. Wash yourself in the scripture and in the truth. We need lots of water to produce more fruit. Third thing is we need lots of good soil. Good soil. And in this analogy, I want you to think about, where are you planted? What's around you? What are you surrounding yourself with? Are you surrounding yourself with good relationships or toxic relationships? Are you surrounded with spiritually minded people or fleshly minded people? Right? Are you putting yourself in compromising situations? You're going to bear less fruit. But if you have good soil, you're going to bear more fruit. Lots of good soil. Here's the fourth one. This is kind of hard. We need lots of pruning. We need lots of pruning. God's the gardener, and he's going to come with a clipper sometimes, and you and I have to yield to the clipper. We've got to yield to the Lord and know, okay, God just cut that off. God just cut that down. God just shut that door. I'm going to trust him. And embrace the pruning, because it's going to bring more fruit. You may think like, oh, what? You ever seen like a rose bush that gets pruned and it just looks like a stick on the ground? And you're like, what is that? Next year, that thing is just boom, right? Pruning. We need lots of pruning, and God will do the pruning. We need to trust him through it. Fifth thing is we need lots of time. There's trees that grow. They won't even produce fruit for like a few years. And so the fruit takes time to be produced. Don't be impatient with yourself as you're hoping for patience. Right? Don't lose your control while you're looking for self-control. Like, God is working. Let the process happen. Don't rush it. A big fat piece of fruit on a little tiny tree is going to kill it. So it's a process. It takes time. And sometimes you need to be patient with the people that are around you just as much as with yourself. It takes some time. Sixth one, I told you there was a lot, right? Sixth one is this. We need lots of strong roots. Roots is where it gives us our nutrients and our stability. We're digging down. We're holding on. We're getting those nutrients. We're able to stand strong. The fellowship that we have, the habits we're forming. When it gets hard, we push down deeper. We're developing our roots, strong, stable. So when the storm comes, we have roots. We hold on. We have good relationships and good habits and whatever that is. Like, we're spiritually minded. The seventh one is this. I thought this was interesting. We need protection. If you want your plant to bear fruit, you need to protect it. If you stick it out in the bright sunshine, some of those plants are just going to die, right? Or if you put it in the pathway of where everybody walks, it's going to get trampled. You need to protect your spiritual life. You need to protect your spiritual life with the Lord. You can't let baseball season run over your spiritual life. You can't let your job run over your spiritual time. You got to seek the Lord. You got to put God first. You got to continue to protect your life. It's not selfish to take care of your spiritual life. It's wise because you're taking care of the relationship that you have with God. Number 8, we need to pull the weeds and kill the vermin. Right? Pull the weeds. There's sin that starts to grow, and you see that sin. Or there's temptation, and you start to feel like, man, I'm really being tempted to this area. Just yank that weed. Pull it out. Repent of it. Turn it away. Cut it out. Like, man, I'm really, I'm really stumbling with the amount of time I'm spending online. Set a timer. Delete an app. I don't know. Pull the weeds. Stop the relationship. I don't know, pull the weeds, whatever it is. And then kill the vermin. What's a vermin? I actually had to look this up, all right? I thought, it's like a rat. It's like anything. It's anything that's going to eat your fruit. Could be the little bug, The worm, the rats, the bird, the rabbit, it looks so cute, but it comes and eats the fruit. Like Satan comes to steal, kill, and destroy. You gotta get rid of that stuff. You gotta kill it. Those relationships or whatever it is that's taken away the fruit in your life. Pull the weeds, kill the vermin, whether it's your flesh or the devil or the world. Put the nail in the coffin. Here's the 9th one. I think this is an interesting one. I learned something about this. You guys ever heard of a root sucker? Root sucker. What is that? Well, that's these little things that grow near the plant and suck out the nutrients from the roots. Little root suckers. So we need purposeful priorities. You need to have purposeful priorities in your life. Remember when Mary and Martha were there? Martha was working so hard, and Mary was told by Jesus, you've chosen the better part. The better part was with the Lord. You need to have purposeful priorities, or other things will just suck the life out. You know, the schedule or the needs or the family or whatever, like you've got to keep number one, purposeful priorities. And here's the last one. We're going to close with this. Worship team's going to come back and we're going to close in worship, but here's our last one. We need to give it all away. We need to give it all away. What does that mean? Well, I found out that if you've got a fruit tree and you leave fruit on it, from year to year, it won't produce as much fruit next year. But if you take all the fruit out, the tree knows like, oh, I better produce more. If you leave the fruit on, it's just like, oh, well, I guess I had enough. What does that say spiritually? Spiritually, I think here's the lesson. Pour yourself out. Give it away. Don't hold back your love, your kindness, your service. Like, don't hold those things back. They'll just get rotten. Pour them out. Give them away, and he will give you more. You don't have to I don't want to give too much love. Love, and he'll bring more love. Joy, and he'll bring more joy. Pour yourself away. Pour yourself out and give yourself away. When we went to El Salvador, that was one of the things Pastor Jorge said. He's like, hey, you have come to pour yourself out. You and I as Christians are called to pour ourselves out. And more fruit will come because God is a good gardener and he desires that fruit. There's a purpose in your fruit. But our practice isn't just to focus on the fruit. Our practice is to focus on the roots, right? Like the real relationship with God, the right relationship with God, and then the fruit comes.